Hey, Kathy. How
Hey,
you doing?
good. How are you?
Thanks for being here. Why don't you introduce yourself and your wonderful organization?
Thank you. Well, thanks for inviting me here. I appreciate it to get the
Yeah.
word out. So, education is definitely the most important. So, my name is Kathy Waters, and I am co founder and executive director of Advocating Against Romance Scammers. We've got this nonprofit since 2020, but we've actually been in the realm of online romance scams and fighting for people since about 2016. So, this is my second job. I have another job that um, makes my living, and it's for a local hospital here, and so it has nothing to do with the romance scams, but this is where my heart is. So yeah, I dedicate a lot of time to our advocacy nonprofit.
Yeah, you definitely advocate a lot of times. So I'm reading 4,000 volunteer hours, probably over that now, because I'm assuming when
Probably,
this was
yes.
written, right? That was a while ago. So
Mhm.
over 4,000 volunteer hours. You talk to government officials, the FTC, Meta, which is hard to get a meeting with Meta, right? So all of these people in the space, and you are sharing what you see, what you hear, what you know, and you're really trying to help the victim. And so that's easy. And Operation Shamrock, right? You're involved in Operation Shamrock and setting that up and that organization.
Yeah, well,
Um,
I actually, with Operation Shamrock, I did have to step down because
mhm.
I felt so bad I couldn't give as much of my help that I could just because of my job and the nonprofit, but we're super close with them. Erin's a friend of mine, and so we're supporting her, and she's almost a nonprofit, and it's gonna be huge. It's gonna be huge with all of us working together. It's so fantastic to know that more people are out there educating. So,
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think that you probably have too much time on your hands and you should do something else. You should start
yeah,
not working hard enough. Yeah. So
right.
yeah. So kind of along the same theme, can you kind of talk about how you got into this work? And like I want to hear that story. It's a great story of how you kind of fell into this or discovered this work.
Sure. So I'll take you back just a little bit. I I'm working at a hospital now, but before I worked 7 years as a social services director at a skilled nursing facility, and that was with the elderly community. And I loved working with the residents. And so, anyways, I got away from that. I'm not working with patients anymore, and this happened to a romance scam happened to my mom's friend. She was telling us all great things about this military man that she met, and of course, it all sounded too good to be true. So on Thanksgiving, she came over for dinner and she showed us his picture and told us that they're engaged, but he's not bringing the ring. And she showed me his name. And so, like I said, that just didn't sound right. So that night, I went and I looked up his account on her Facebook account, and his name is Ross Newton. And as soon as I saw the picture of the military man, he was in his uniform and it had his badge here with his last name. Well, it wasn't Newton, it was Denny, Lenny or Denny. And so I looked up Army Man Denny just to see what would come up. And I found Brian Denny's LinkedIn. And so, and which it was the same picture using the same guy. So I messaged Brian on LinkedIn and let him know what was going on. Kind of a very typical thing that the victims will do because they feel like these identity theft victims are not aware of the scammer that their photos were taken. And so a few days later, Brian reported back to me that this had been happening for the last 6 months and hasn't really been able to do anything. He's reported accounts aren't coming down. More and more women were reaching out to him as victims, making sure he was the real guy. And that's kind of where it started. Well, I told him I was going to start investigating a little more. He told me I can find his name under Mike, Steve, John, Denny, anything. And he was right. I found literally thousands of accounts. And of course, I didn't document all of that at that time because I had no idea where we would be, 8 years later. But so that's what we did. I started then thinking I better document this stuff because we're reporting it's not coming down, and Facebook and every other account or social media account needs to know what's going on. So we built a report on our findings. It wasn't on just Brian, it was on other accounts too. And I was able to get the word to Facebook at the time, and they agreed to meet with us. So that's kind of how it all built up. And we realized that there weren't many laws in place, and nothing much was being done or able to be done because there's a certain law that's in place that keeps social media from being responsible for any criminal activity online. So, and it's just kind of snowballed from there. So, and
Yeah.
that
I
was very,
really like, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Stop. I'm
no,
talking now. But I really like that story because you went through the journey, right? Of the wait a minute, this seems wrong, right? And let me do some research, and oh my gosh, it is wrong, right? And then you contacted Bryan Denny, and I love it because you went through the journey. I don't love what happened, but
right.
like you've been there, you've been on that side of it, not necessarily as a victim, but as someone trying to help someone who's been affected by the real.
And definitely on the side of it from, yeah, I've heard about it, but I had no idea the extent of it.
Right.
None.
Yeah. Like, oh,
Yeah,
that's something I see on the 6 o'clock news for a 2 minute story. And then I never knew.
right, right.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, I hear so often from the public, kind of on the same vein we're talking about, but so often from the public, I would never fall for that. Right. I would never get involved with a romance fraud. And I think a lot of times, like, yeah, that's probably true, right? When things are going well and life is
Mhm,
good and you're in a great relationship, yeah, you probably won't get affected by a romance fraud.
mhm,
But when life punches you in the gut a few times and
right.
you're lonely or maybe you're housebound or whatever, that, right, when a romance
Absolutely.
fraud is going to happen. So, what, in your opinion, is something you hear or a misconception you hear or see often that just isn't true with regard to romance fraud or the victim?
Well, I first want to say that when people say, oh, that'll never happen to me, already their walls are down and they're
Yep.
susceptible because it's not going to happen to them. So why would they have to look for that? Why would they have to look for those red flags? So I feel like the misconception a lot of times is that it's not going to happen to me, and that these victims just hand over money. And that's not the case at all. Unfortunately, people do not educate themselves on this. And I'm one of them. I didn't sit and read about romance scams until it affected my world and or my mother's friend's world, really. And so I just put my nose in it. But and then started reading about, wow, the manipulation tactics that go into this. Um, it's not just financial abuse, it's emotional and psychological abuse. And it is abuse. It's not, you know, just a few things that are being said to people to hand over money. Like, they get into your mind and they brainwash you in order to get what they want. And it's not always money. It's, photographs that they can blackmail you with. It's personal information. It's building them an account, whether it be a social media account, a bank account. So yeah, I think that one is, it's not going to happen to me. And the other thing is that people, oh, and not to mention people thinking that they're uneducated or just the older crowd. I mean, there's
Yeah.
several different misconceptions, but I think the biggest one is how they think people just hand over money. And that's simply 100%
Yeah.
not the case.
Yeah. Like, hello, baby, I love you. Can I have $1 million? Yeah.
Yeah.
That is not
No.
the case.
Right.
And I mean, think about it. A lot of the people we talk to, it's like 20 texts a day. I don't think I've texted my husband 20 texts in the past month, right? Like,
Mhm.
they are involved in your life. And they are really good at caring, right? The scammers are really good at
Oh,
scheming like they care.
absolutely.
And who doesn't want that? They're good at pretending to be the prince charming, princess charming, whatever.
Right.
Um, and so you so
And
I
something I was going to say, something I learned too, with this. In the meantime, over the years, I've read a book about the five love languages.
mm,
And it was like an aha moment when I read this book because everything having to do with words, this is not, you're not touching somebody. This person's not really giving you gifts. They're giving you the words and the promises. And so if you're a word person, I most definitely think you're more susceptible to the scams too. So, I mean,
yeah.
of course, there are known, the victims, or I mean, I'm sorry, the scammers are known to send gifts here and there, of
Yeah.
course, from
Yeah.
another victim's credit card. But
Yeah.
so, and if those people are gift people too, that can suck them right in. So it's all about the love language as well. And I really believe most of the victims are affirmations, words of affirmation is their love
Mhm,
language. So
mhm.
yeah,
I mean,
interesting.
I think too, like even if you just haven't heard nice things said about you in a while, right? Or
Who
maybe
doesn't like
ever,
you?
it's just, I mean, who wouldn't? Who
Right.
doesn't like
Right.
having something like that about them?
Yes.
And our colleague always brings up, think about back in the day before computers, before anything. I mean, people could fall in love over letters, right? You could fall
Oh,
in love
yeah.
with someone over
Love
letters. And
letters. Yes.
yeah, and that's what they're doing just over text now. So it's the same
Right.
techniques from hundreds of years ago, those scammers. It's just
Mhm.
we have new technology.
Yes.
Um, all right, Kathy, what is the biggest challenge or challenges you face when you're advocating for fraud victims?
I think it's getting people to delve into the education and find out what's really going on in these scams, how intricate they are, the webs of manipulation. And we go into and talk to lawmakers, and they hear about it. They've heard about it. It's kind of like how I was too. But you have to try and get them to want to look this information up right after we leave the meeting, or it won't be done. Nobody will take an interest. So that's been very hard to get the education out in the community, especially through social media. We've posted all on different social media sites, but the people who aren't interested or think it's not going to happen to them, they're just going to scroll. And we need to be able to put the information in front of everybody and for them to really understand. So that's been the hardest part, because if you post something on another group, say a dating site, or a dating chat on Facebook, and you post, or any social media company, if you post something about romance scams, they look at it as it's like garbage postings, or and they'll take it down right away and they'll block you. Another challenge I would think is, a lot of people don't think about the identity theft victims in this as well, whose identities have been stolen. And so that's a challenge in itself for the victims to understand that they are not the criminal, they are not the scammer. A lot of times the victims will reach out to the real person and give them what for and tell them they've been scamming them. And so it's that's a challenge for us to get them to understand that the real person is not the scammer, the actual
Yeah.
scammers. So
Yes,
yeah,
Kathy, a million times, yeah. And like
yeah,
you understand the confusion because they think, aha, I found the scammer,
absolutely.
right? And so, but really it's just another victim of a crime of identity
Right.
theft. And
Right. And
so
they don't and Brian tells his story a lot, my co-founder, about the victims that have reached out to his family, his children, his wife, I mean, and threats. She gets the threats. Brian doesn't usually get the threats. When people reach out to him, he does get the, I think you've been scamming me and stuff, but never, at least no threats to this day. But yeah, when kids when you reach out to people's children, and yeah,
yeah,
that's
and
hard.
that's
That's
a
hard to
that's a side of it
deal.
that is even less told, right? The side of
Absolutely.
my identity has been stolen and now I'm getting thousands of
Yes.
messages from angry people. Yeah.
Yes.
So, Kathy, in your opinion, what is missing in the current support systems for romance fraud victims?
I think the biggest thing missing is compassion, um, especially from our law enforcement agencies. And I really truly believe that just all goes with the education of understanding how these scams work. Law enforcement look at it like these are scammers. They are stealing your money. But the whole emotional part of it, um, is rarely thought about, is really put in. And we have laws against elder abuse. Emotional, psychological, financial, all the same thing. I absolutely think that needs to be looked at in the same realm of crime, as that this is all a type of abuse. So I really think compassion, and it really isn't just law enforcement, it's from families as well. I know it's frustrating. That's why I tell the families too, is I understand this is frustrating. I understand that there's only so much that you can do, but you've got to leave that door open for them. You've got to understand that this is something that is almost uncontrollable or uncontrolled for them to try and decipher through. And until they finally realize, the victims finally realize, they're gonna need you. And closing the doors on a family, or closing the doors on a victim, is could probably be one of the worst things in their entire life that they have to deal with after the scam, including with the
Yeah.
scam. So
and you can understand, just like you can understand the frustration of family members.
Oh,
uh
absolutely.
they're just trying, like, can't you see, right? But it's so much easier to see when you're not in it. And
Oh,
I think a lot of
it's a whole different
uh
window, right?
whole different,
Yeah,
right? The when the emotional manipulation tactics are pointed at you, it is easier to see, like, oh, that's not right. Oh, that
right.
doesn't make sense, right? But when you're getting that manipulation pointed at you, it's so difficult.
Yes.
Um, and I think we have a lot of families who come to us and speak to us and say, I don't understand, right? I go and I visit my mom and dad 3 times a week. And the reality is going over for dinner or bringing the grandkids over a couple times a week is not the same as a partner sharing your life, right? There's a
Right.
difference. So they may be have connected to you and their family. They may be connected to their community, but they're missing that partner in life, and that
Absolutely.
vulnerability, right? That's getting taken care
Yeah,
of.
there's not, I mean, you can share things with your family, but you share a lot more personal things with your partner, and everybody wants that. And I mean, you can't tell me that everybody doesn't need that either. We all need somebody in our life
Exactly.
that we can share. And like you said earlier, who doesn't want that? So
Yeah.
yeah,
Well,
that's
we're
very
social creatures. Even the most curmudgeon, grumpy person on the planet still needs some sort of connection, right? So,
absolutely. Yeah.
yeah. All right, Kathy, how can we help contribute to the fight against romance scams? What can we do?
So education is key. If
Education.
you
Yep.
Yes, if you watch videos or if you see articles or anything that provides education, share it amongst your social media. I can't tell you, since I've been doing this, how many of my personal friends and family have messaged me privately about knowing somebody who's been scammed or even them themselves. And it's amazing that how many people that you will know that this has happened to. They'll post, somebody will message you, oh my gosh, this happened to me. And even if it hasn't, you're putting that in their ear a little bit, and they'll be like, oh, I remember seeing an article like this, and they may go look it back up. So I'm a big person on education for everybody and everywhere.
Yep.
I would say write your lawmakers, let them know how bad this is. There's several different bills that are out there right now, that are being introduced in different forms, one way or another, in regards to the scams, money laundering, all different things like that. Write your lawmakers. They're the ones that have to vote on these bills, and they need to learn. They need to educate themselves on it. So, um, yeah, I mean that's primarily the things to do here, at least especially in the United States. So,
All right, Kathy, what was the best day or best moment you've ever had while doing this thing? Biggest success or just biggest feel good moment?
I probably have two. One, when we actually got our federal nonprofit going and accepted. That was huge for me because, and well, me and Brian, we've been doing this for a while before, and to see this come to fruition like this was an absolutely incredible day to get that letter and saying, that we are now considered a 501c3. Um, and then, oh gosh, the next one was our World Day that we were able to get started up and approved for, and um, that's the World Romance Scam Prevention Day. And so I think those were two huge things for us, and to be able to help other victims, families, identity theft victims, in this fight. So yeah, they're probably pretty even with each other.
So, talk about that day a little bit more, Kathy, just so people know exactly what you created and what it is.
Sure. So it's World Romance Scam Prevention Day, and it's on October 3rd of every year. And this year coming up will be our third annual. So we've had some really great success over the past years. We've had match groups backing AARP, What the Hack podcast. CSN is one of the sponsors of us. I mean, it's been, and several other organizations. It's been an absolute joy to, I mean, it's hard to say, it's bittersweet because it's a joy to know that so many agencies, organizations, individuals are supporting this day. And we get more and more each day. Like I said, Match Group, they did a PSA both years, one with Jonathan Bennett, who was in Mean Girls, and they did a real nice PSA for that. So that was exciting to see. But yeah, it's this last year we did a My Voice campaign where victims can turn in a card and they could be completely anonymous. And we delivered every one of those cards, either if it was through the mail, snail mail, or hand delivering them in DC when we had our meetings in last October. I really wish that we had more. I can't remember the exact number now. We are going to do a comprehensive report on it. It's actually
Mhm.
in the middle of it now, with our findings, just to show people that, it's not just the elderly crowd. And then that it's not just happening on Facebook and Instagram and dating sites. It's happening on gaming sites too. And
Yeah.
so there's a lot of great information that came from those cards. No names will be ever posted out there. But it's just a good amount of information that we can hopefully provide our lawmakers this year for our World Romance Scam Prevention Day acknowledgments. So,
All right, Kathy. So we heard your best days. What is the worst day that you've ever had? We'll do these.
so I think there's 2 days that, just like with the best days of my worst days, I had a physician reach out to me and let me know that one of the nurses that she worked with was involved in a romance scam using Brian's pictures, our co-founder, and she ended up taking her life because her marriage was awful. Her children were miserable, and I think she thought this was her way out of this marriage. So that was a hard day. I actually, when I found that out, I didn't tell Brian for a while because I really didn't know, how do you tell somebody that, you know, like we're talking about what these identity theft victims go through. Yeah, how does an identity theft victim process that?
Yeah.
It's, yeah, very hard. And then there was another victim that I worked with. We were doing a piece for the New York Times, and her story was a part of it, and the rest of it was supposed to be about the advocacy and stuff. Well, all of a sudden one day, communication ended, and the pub or the author of the article had messaged me and said, "Hey, have you heard from her?" And I said, "No, that you say it," because she would message me regularly. And he looked into it more and come to find out she was a part um, of a murder suicide. Her husband had killed her and her father, and himself. He was also a part of the as being a victim because the two of them, her and her husband, thought that they were helping a service member. Come to find out, they lost quite a bit of money. Now nobody knows if that's the reason of why that happened, but it it was a heartbreaker when I found that out. I knew he had a hard time with it. Before the story came out, he was, or before they started doing the story, doing the research for it, they had asked him over and over if he was okay to do it, and he was fine, and he wants to help people. And so I definitely think there's more to it. But yeah, that was a huge heartbreaker in the story.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, not thank you for bringing that up, but thank you for bringing it up because I think, again, that goes into a piece that the general public doesn't think about, right? I think they think you lost the money, just get another job and you'll be fine, right? And move on with your life. Because
Right.
whenever we see this reporting, it's just the scam, right? The juicy bit of
Right.
the scam and how dumb, quote unquote dumb, right, the victim was. And then that's it. Like it's almost like the happily ever after, except for we don't delve into what the ever after is. And the
Right.
truth is it's years, the rest of their life recovering,
Oh
right?
yeah.
A lot of them are suicidal because of the depression.
Mhm.
And think too, it is a death of a relationship, right? Yes, it is a
Absolutely.
scammer, but it is a death of a relationship. And
Yep.
so all these feelings, and now you're financially unstable. So, like, of course, they're going to be extremely depressed. Who wouldn't? Again, who wouldn't?
Right.
And then the suicide. I mean, you see that weekly, and I hate to say that, but weekly we will have someone who is feeling suicidal, and it's tragic. It's tragic.
Yeah. Huge, huge issue. And it's
Yeah,
it's not documented. We don't have any numbers of how many people have taken their lives
exactly,
because of this. Yeah.
exactly.
And that's very hard because when you when you need to get change done, the people who do the change need to see the actual numbers. They want to see the facts. They don't want to hear just you coming in and being like, oh, yeah, a lot of people have done this. They want facts, they want numbers. And so that's very hard of why we haven't really been able to move forward with um, any bills being created out there and stuff because there's not a lot of numbers. We can take in numbers from the Internet Crimes Complaint Center through the FBI, and they do look at that. They are, I'll show them their states, how many victims were in their state that reported, and so they do look at that. But there's so many other factors that go into it that they can't take into consideration because they're not facts or we don't have the actual numbers and facts. So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
too bad, but we need to make that known. We have to make that known about the suicides and the years of therapy afterwards and not being able to trust anybody, including yourself, on making decisions.
Including yourself, right?
Yeah.
How many times have you heard? Because I know I've heard it a bunch.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know who to trust outside, and I don't even know if I can trust myself.
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly. What do I know? I don't know if I can look at this, you know, can I talk to this person? Can I do this? I don't trust myself anymore to make a decision. I don't trust myself to not talk to the wrong person. And so yeah, it's um I can't even imagine the emotional and psychological effects that somebody has. I just know from what they've told me.
Yeah.
I've never felt it in my heart or my mind.
Yeah. But if
So
you do this work, you know that it is linked to suicide, depression, major
absolutely.
trauma, recovery. You know it. We know it is, right? But we
Yes.
don't have pretty numbers. But we know it
Right.
is. All right. Here's kind of a bonkers question. Not too bonkers. So, Kathy, what's something you've gotten really good at because of this work or through doing this?
Um, to think outside the box, to realize it's not whatever's just right in front of your face. You have to educate yourself on any or every subject before you can make any kind of decision. Judgments are disgusting, and you see it all through this scam. And yeah, I think I have learned myself that um, I need to see every aspect of an issue, and I hope and pray that whoever watches this or comes across anything with romance scams, they don't scroll, that they read, at least read a little bit of it, get some of the red flags in your mind, and just know that it can happen to you. It can happen to anybody. If you're working in fraud, if you're working in banking, if you're working in law enforcement, I've seen it all. Doctors, therapists, yeah, it's,
Yeah,
keep
you're
your mind
100%
open.
right. Yeah, it doesn't matter the education, what you do. Same
No,
thing. We've had IT people, we've had therapists, we've had doctors, we've had nurses, we've had the whole
yeah,
gamut. It's because they go through your heart, right?
yes,
It's not about the brain, it's about the
right.
heart. Um, I think something I've learned to do better is to just shush and listen.
Mhm.
I love to talk, you know that, Kathy. I love to talk, but
Me too.
um, yeah, and I think this is something we've learned about too. It's Brene Brown, the silver lining of the situation. Of the like, oh, you lost $20,000, but at least you didn't lose $100,000, right? That's not something
Right,
that a victim needs to hear. And so through our trauma training, I've kind of learned that, and I think something that you and your organization absolutely does and other organizations are doing is listening, because I think that it's they're not victims are not getting that anywhere else. And
right.
there's a quote, and it says, not my quote, I wish it was my quote, but being heard is so close to being loved that for the average person, they can't tell the difference, right? They can't tell the difference.
That's
Um,
right.
and I think that's spot on with everything you do and your organization does. You are listening when no one else does, or is, rather.
Absolutely.
All right, who's going to save us, Kathy? Is it government? Is it tech? Is it nonprofits? Is it an individual? Who's going to save us?
All of us. I hope all of us. I think, unfortunately, it's been years and years that lawmakers have put this in the hands of the tech companies. So not a huge person on regulation, but I definitely think that our social media companies, the internet needs to be regulated. Like I said, they've gave them years to do this and clean up their sites, and we've heard a lot of "we're gonnas," but nothing's really come through. No, we've seen no changes. Our internet is, and for our social media companies, are just as unsafe. A lot of them are putting in different different tools and stuff, which is great. Um, but they're still not held accountable, especially when, you report a fake account and it remains. And it's, we'll report an account to, one of Brian's accounts. They look at it and they say this doesn't go against our community standards, and they're using his photos. So there's things
Yeah.
like that that they need to be held accountable for. And so I think that it's going to have to come from our government to start, and then we're going to have the social media companies that are going to embrace the regulations and start that, because the conversations start there. They start there. They don't start at the bank. They don't start anywhere else but the social media platforms on these messengers. So anyways, and it has to trickle down. All of us, we all have to be a voice, and we have to educate, share stuff, talk about it at the table, kitchen table, talking about family reunions. I know it's probably a weird topic, but you'll be surprised how many people say, "Oh, my friend, that happened to them that I work with," or yeah, and it can
It's
definitely strike up some
so true.
conversation.
And yeah, you hit
Mhm.
on it before, right? Every single time I bring it up, someone has a story, right? Someone knows somebody, or
Oh,
it happened to them, or whatever. Someone has a connection to it. But
right.
we're just not caring about it, right? Just because you're aware doesn't mean you care. But like we need to start caring. Right?
Right.
We need to start caring. It is
Absolutely. And we need people to report, because if you don't report, nobody knows it's a problem. There's not a problem. I mean, that's how they
Yep.
see it,
Yeah,
so reporting is crucial to getting help and more education and more funding. So
100%. 100%. All right, last question, Kathy.
sure.
What's one thing that you want all romance fraud victims to know?
100% you're not alone. If you're a victim, reach out to a reputable agency that works with romance scam victims, fraud. It's uh, it's so dark and such a lonely place when you think you're alone, and people need to know that's not the case at all. And people are here for them. We're here for them. You guys are here for them. You know, reach out to us.
Yeah, you are not alone. Reach out to Kathy. Reach out to AARS. You guys are great. We love what you do, obviously. Thank you so much for your time today. I know you're busy. You're just a little busy. No big deal. You're just doing like five jobs and volunteering a billion hours a week.
I love
But
it.
I'm sure there are days you just want some peace and quiet. So thank you for spending your personal time with talking to us today. I appreciate
Absolutely. Thank you.
it.